Today, I'm really excited to sit down with Charlie Bourgeois. Charlie played 7 seasons in the NHL as a professional hockey player, and he also spent a season coaching in the AHL with the Moncton Hawks. Since then, he's built an incredible hockey career in hockey that lasted from 1981 all the way to today. He's the proud owner of Atlantic Hockey Group, one of the biggest and most respected development programs. Charlie, thank you so much for being here today.
It's my pleasure to be with you, Charlie.
Yeah, thank you. Can you walk me through your journey from the minor league to the CHL and eventually to NHL?
Absolutely. I started playing hockey 5 or 6 years old and played minor hockey here in the Moncton area. I actually started in outdoor rinks. So for the first couple of years before we had our first real nice rink. So all my minor hockey was played here. And from here, I went on to play with the University of Moncton, which was probably my big break. Because we ended up going to the national championships for the first time in Calgary. And I was fortunate enough that the Calgary Flames coaches, Alan McNeil and Pierre Paget, happened to come in to watch a game, saw me play, and offered me a contract with the Calgary Flames.
Oh, wow, that's crazy. You spent time coaching the AHL with the Moncton Hawks. What was that experience like, and what did you learn from coaching at that level?
It was a wonderful experience. I've just come back from playing and coaching in Europe and France, and I wanted to gain more experience here. So I just went over to the Coliseum where the team was based, knocked on the coach's door, and I said I'd like to help coach. And basically, I just volunteered my time and started going on the ice for practices. Then he invited me behind the bench, and then that developed into a full-time position. So the coach was fantastic. Robbie Laird was his name, and I learned a great deal. I actually ended up playing some games as well with the injuries, and players were being called up to the Winnipeg Jets. So I actually ended up playing a few games as well.
Yeah. Okay. You stayed active in hockey for so many years. What has kept you involved for so long? And can you give me an overview of Atlantic Hockey Group?
Certainly, I'm so fortunate to be able, at my age, over 60 years old, to still be involved in hockey. You know, it's never felt like a job. And my goal after I retired from playing, traveling all over the world, was to come back home and to share my experiences. I was fortunate to play for many great coaches. So I want to come home and pass that on to the next generation of players. Certainly, I didn't know they would grow into, where now we work with 10,000 young hockey players and adult hockey players each year across Atlantic Canada. We had the opportunity to work with some of the best players in the world. Sidney Crosby spent many years in our program. Brad Marchand, Nathan McKinnon. I remember seeing them, at our ID camps when they were 6, 7 years old. So it's been wonderful to be able to share my knowledge, and a lot of the work we do is mentoring young coaches as well, which is very important. So we're very proud of the Atlantic Hockey Group. We work with over 500 coaches each year. We have a great team here that is totally dedicated and passionate about the game of hockey. And not just boys, I can say the girls too. Last spring, we had over 50 female teams. So wonderful to see that growth.
Yeah. You played under many different coaches. What are the 3 most important skills young players should focus on developing?
Well, as the game is being played now, I would say skating, skating, and skating. It's if you can skate, the rest of the game will be easy. The stick handling, the passing, the shooting. But the game is so fast now. If a player has any weaknesses in their skating, it's going to be a challenge to keep moving up to higher levels. Important skill to me is mental toughness. It may not be a physical hockey skill, but the great athletes, hockey players we've seen move up to the highest levels and make it to the professional levels is they're very strong mentally. Mental toughness is just critically important. to forget a bad shift, make a bad play, and then you just focus on the next shift and the next game.
Okay. You played under many different coaches in your career. In your opinion, what separates a great coach from just a good one?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I was fortunate to play for 3 coaches that went on to win Stanley Cups. Unfortunately, I wasn't playing with them when they won the Stanley Cups, but it started with Jean Perrault, who was my coach with the University of Moncton. He went on to win the Stanley Cup with the Montreal Canadiens. I also had Jacques Demers in St. Louis Blues. He won a Stanley Cup with the Canadiens. And finally, Bob Johnson, who coached me with the Calgary Flames, and he went on to win a Stanley Cup with Pittsburgh. They were all amazing coaches. Obviously they know the X's and O's, the technical part, but more importantly than that, to me, a great coach knows how to manage the different characters and personalities on a team. Typically, to some players, you may have to give them a push, and some maybe they'll need to maybe a hug.
Yeah.
It's to really manage those different personalities, understand what it takes to get the most, and making every player feel important with the role they are playing. You know what? The fourth line checker that's going to kill penalties is just as important maybe as a guy that's going to score goals. So you got to make sure each player knows their responsibilities and make them feel like they're appreciated.
Yeah. Every coach has their go-to tactic. What are your 2 favorite types of zone entries, and why do they work so well?
I like the center drive, and anything you can do to maybe confuse your opponents, confuse the defensemen. So, with that center drive, you're hoping maybe that the defenseman will make bad decisions and maybe both back up, which can create a large gap for a winger to curl into. It's all about creating, scoring opportunities in that slot area. I also, as I was a defenseman, I know what was challenging for me to defend. And I think something that's very effective too, Charlie, would be just a little chip pass where you're really forcing that D to have to pivot. And remember, as our forwards are coming down full speed, it's a very challenging for a D to have to pivot from going backwards to forward. So again, chip pass behind the D, curl back, get that pass, and curl back in front of D. So again, you're trying to make it challenging for your opponents, maybe make bad decisions. But certainly center drive, chip passes, I think are still very effective in the way the game's played now.
Okay. What offensive forecheck do you prefer, and what makes it effective?
When I coached either university or the professional level, I really want my forwards to be aggressive on the forecheck. Aggressive but smart, and when I say smart, making sure that we always had a high forward. But really being aggressive, F1, F2. Again, you're trying to create, mistakes from your opponents, putting pressure on them. And, again, having your high forward would also allow you to activate your defensemen, pinching on the wingers to create even more pressure on the other team's breakout.
Yeah. In the neutral zone, which forecheck system do you feel works best against today's style of play?
A system that I really enjoyed using is a system I learned in Europe. I played and coached in Europe for several years, and a very popular system there, maybe because they have the larger ice surfaces, was called the left wing lock. And where basically your left winger became almost like a third defenseman. And what that also allowed us to do is to put our best, most offensive-minded forwards at center and right wing, where they really had total more freedom, less defensive responsibilities in a neutral zone, where they could, and it allowed us to put our bigger, stronger, best defensive forwards on left wings. So I've always felt that hockey games are won and lost in your defensive zone, 3-on-3 down low. I think that's where a lot of the games are won and lost. So rather than having maybe a small centerman having to battle 3-on-3 down low, we always had our biggest, strongest winger, left winger, being that player. That would be, I think it's a fairly easy job to cover the points. But it's those, and that's why you see NHL teams spend so much time and practices, working on defending 3-on-3, or on the offense side, we're working on cycling the puck. So the left wing lock was a system that I actually almost won a national championship with the University of Moncton using that system.
Wow. In the defensive zone, what coverage system do you prefer? For example, box plus one, man to man, or any other?
When I played back in the back in the 80s, it was really man on man that was the most popular. And obviously you really have to trust your teammates that everybody needed to do their job. And that's why if you have one weaker player on the ice that's not committed to battling in defensive hockey, you're going to be in trouble. Man on man, however, you always had to be alert, aware that to be in a proper position if one of your teammates would get beat. Okay? So, for example, if my D's battling one-on-one in the corner, if I'm covering the player in the slot area, I couldn't just turn my back to the battle in the corner and just worry about my player. I had to be aware if my partner got beat, I would have to react and possibly play a 2-on-1. So man on man, but every player aware that you may have to collapse or go away from the man on man if somebody gets beat. So you have to be ready to adapt and to be flexible.
You've coached for many years. What was that experience like?
I've always enjoyed coaching. It started coaching my 4 children through minor hockey for many years at all the levels, U7, U9, U11, U13. And then my first professional coaching responsibilities were in Europe, where I was actually a player and coach, which was sometimes challenging to try and do both roles. And then I was able to, when I got back home, I became a head coach for the University of Moncton. So where we actually had the opportunity to go to a national championship. So yeah, I kind of miss the coaching part. I don't currently coach any particular team, but I've had some great memories, great experiences.
When you were 15, you experienced a terrible tragedy with the loss of your father, who was murdered in the line of duty. How did you get through that time, and how did hockey play an important role for you?
Yeah, another great question. That was a very challenging time for me. Like your dad, like all hockey dads, my dad, he shared his passion for the game of hockey, and he loved the game. And I remember we wouldn't miss a game on Saturday night watching Hockey Night in Canada, and so he built an outdoor rink for me and did everything, supported me. And when we lost him, it was I actually quit hockey for a while, and really, um, I'm so fortunate to have a great mom who knew I loved the game and slowly brought me back into hockey. And she was had to raise 4 kids on her own, so my mother was and my dad were really my heroes. And one regret is that my dad never got to see me play in the NHL, but I know he was there because he was a huge Montreal Canadiens fan. And my first game in Montreal with all my family there, friends, I scored my first NHL goal. So I think my dad had a lot to do with that. So, but in life we all face adversity, obstacles. It's how you keep pushing, and certainly, it was that was a great way to honor him, I guess, for me to make it to the NHL.
Yeah. Who was the best playmaker you ever played with, and what made that player so special?
I would have to say Doug Gilmour when I was in St. Louis. Doug had some great years there. I think one playoffs he led all players in scoring, and he had such a high hockey IQ and very unselfish player, but he also played with a lot of toughness. So yeah, I would say he would be the best playmaker I would have played with in my career.
Yeah. In your opinion, who's the greatest coach of all time, and what qualities put them above the rest?
I think if you look at the coach that won the most Stanley Cups, you'd have to say Scotty Bowman. I mean, his record is incredible. And so, I mentioned earlier the coaches that I had my experiences, Bob Johnson, Jacques Demers, Jean Perrat, were great coaches. But, I think Scotty Bowman's winning record is second to none.
Yeah. If you could create an all-time starting lineup using players from any era, which 3 forwards, 2 defensemen, and goalie would you take?
Yeah, that's a great question. From my era, and I still think the best skilled player ever is Wayne Gretzky. If you look at his records, it's just incredible. For leadership, the best captain ever in any sport, I would take Mark Messier.
Yeah.
And Connor McDavid.
Yeah.
Like, I watched a game last night against Pittsburgh, and that one goal he scored, the speed that he plays is incredible. It's a whole different level. A combination of speed and skills. So I think that would be a pretty good line. Gretzky, Messier, and McDavid.
The 3 Oilers.
The 3, yeah. Well, I never even thought about that. Jeez, you're sharp. Yeah, you're absolutely right. I would think guys like Gordie Howe way back, but I think those 3 would be tough to match up against.
Yeah.
On defense, the only player, and I actually played with guys that played against or with Bob Orr and Wayne Gretzky, and a lot of those guys I played, they would even put Bob Orr ahead of Wayne Gretzky.
Yeah.
Bob Orr was amazing. So on defense, you'd have to have Bob Orr. And a defenseman that I love to watch now is Cale Makar.
Yeah.
Again, the skill level, the speed, the footwork is amazing. So Bob Orr and Cale Makar in defense. Goaltending, one of my heroes, and we just lost him. I think I have to go with Ken Dryden.
Yeah.
So I think that would be a pretty good top 5.
Yeah. Mine would be, center would be Wayne Gretzky. I'd put Connor McDavid on left wing and Mario Lemieux on right wing.
Yeah.
Bobby Orr and Nicholas Lindstrom on defense, and Dominic Hasek in net.
Those are great choices as well. I actually played against Mario Lemieux. Yeah, he was amazing. Again, his size, strength, his skill, hockey IQ. Yeah, it'd be hard to argue against having Mario Lemieux. I guess I chose Messier for that leadership aspect, and he could turn a game around, not just by scoring a goal, with a big hit.
Yeah.
And his leadership in the bench. I put a lot of value in that type of leadership as well. But those are great. Those are great choices as well.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for the interview, Charlie Bourgeois. It's been nice to interview you.
I've really enjoyed it, and I got to say, I've watched you play, and you are an excellent hockey player. So I hope you're going to stay with it, keep working on it, because I see you improving every time you're on the ice. So keep working at the game.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.